I would like to start by asking you a simple question. Who of you has already felt overwhelmed while working? And what do we most often do in that situation? We either start working harder or get completely stuck. And that's exactly what I felt also 1 year ago. I was actually combining a full-time job in my startup and combining this with my master's thesis. Actually, I was doing 2 full-time jobs at the same time. Now, after coming home, after a long, hard-working day, I started to realize that this situation was not sustainable in the long term, and that at a specific point in time, I would have to choose. Looking back to it now, I could have been not more wrong than that. And do you know why? Because today, I'm perfectly combining a full-time job with my own startup. And I hear you thinking, Mattias, how is that possible? Well, by achieving more in less time. I will repeat, achieve more in less time. And do you know how? Well, I know it sounds like a paradox, but in the coming minutes, I'm going to show you 2 simple techniques that will allow you to achieve more in less time, and that will provide you a solution to actually when you feel overwhelmed or get completely stuck. So are you ready for that? Well, great. So let me start with where it all began. It was summer, and I was working a lot of hours, doing a lot of things, and every time I came home, I started thinking about this question. Should I continue with my startup? Should I go for a career in a company? What should I do? So what I decided was, let's go on a holiday, and I will see afterwards what happens. So what I like to do when I'm on a holiday is actually reading books. So I started reading different personal development books. And there was one specific personal development book, a little phrase that catched my attention. The phrase was, improve your effectiveness and you will gain time. And at that point in time, I didn't have enough time. So that phrase triggered me so much that I started realizing, okay, let's improve my effectiveness. The first question that popped up in my mind was, okay, but what does it mean, being effective? What does it mean, effectiveness? Well, actually, effectiveness is achieving the most out of the time you get. So whether you get 1 hour or whether you get 8 hours, that doesn't really matter. It's what you get out of this 1 hour, it's what you get out of these 8 hours that really matters. So what I did was when I came home, I started analyzing every action I was taking within my own startup. And I asked myself always the same question. Does this specific action helps me to reach my goal or not? And if it was no, I didn't do the action. Now, after 2 to 3 weeks, I was able to come up with a short list of, let's say, 7 to 8 tasks that I always did because I saw that I was capable of achieving my goal by doing them. And that's actually interesting because I started talking with people around me about this topic. And what they told me was, Mattias, do you know that there's actually a law that describes what you have experienced? The Pareto law. The Pareto law actually says that 20% of your causes leads to 80% of the consequences. Or more simply, that 20% of your actions lead to 80% of the result. So if you start thinking about that, that means that the other 80% actions only lead to 20% of the result. So there are specific actions that are more worth it than others. And that's exactly the first technique I would like to share with you, is that you should start to focus on these key tasks that give you the most possible or the best result you could have. Because if you start focusing on them and you start to remove the other tasks, you will free up a lot of time and you will be able to achieve more in less time. So that's the first one I would like to share with you. So for the second one, I'm actually going to ask you another question. Do you know that feeling that when you have 1 hour the task will probably take 1 hour. But if you have 8 hours, the task will probably take 8 hours. Yeah, everybody knows that feeling. And that's actually the law of Parkinson. It says that actually, when you get time to do a task, it will take the time you will give to it. But if we think about that, that means that actually it's playing against us. Why? Because if we want to do a task really good, when we take 7 days, then it will start to take 7 days. So it will take more time if we want to do it good. So what I'm now going to show you by a personal story is how you can actually flip this law such that it becomes a strength of you, such that you can use it and that it can help you to achieve more in less time. So let me explain that. It was actually a personal story I got, so I was working and I got phoned by a client. He called me, Mattias, your startup is quite interesting. You're doing workshops on soft skills, and you know what's really interesting is that I would like to know what you're really doing. So let's book in a meeting and see whether or not we would buy a specific workshop. So I said, okay, that's great. Let's book in a meeting. So we planned in a meeting in exactly 7 days. And do you know what I did the first 6 days? Exactly nothing. And now probably you start thinking, Mattias, that's crazy. No, that wasn't. Because I asked myself a simple question up front. And that question was, what would you do if you only had 4 hours left? And if you start thinking about this question, that means that you should start to think of, okay, what does this client needs to be convinced? That's actually that we are professional, and that's that the content that we are providing is really valuable for him. So what did I do? Instead of making a presentation of 40 slides, of a lot of animations, putting in a lot of effort of trying to improve it, I made a presentation of exactly 5 slides. 5 slides on which 3 were the most impressive insights we got within our startup. And do you know what was the result? The client was convinced, and he signed. And the whole point I would like to make now is that what would have happened if I would have taken 7 days to complete this task? Probably exactly the same result. But do you know how much more time you would have put into it? And that's the whole point of the Parkinson's law. It's making sure that when the deadline is there, you start to focusing on the right things. Now, what's actually the best part of these 2 techniques that I just shared with you is that you can use them both in your professional life, but also in your personal life. Instead of asking you the question, what 20% results can lead to 80%, what 20% input can lead to 80% of the results, you could start asking yourself the question, what 20% people cause 80% of my happy moments in life? You have just determined with whom you should spend time with and with whom you should not spend time with, reducing again time that you can free up to use for other things. You see, the 2 techniques can also be applied both in your personal and your professional life, and that's the power of it. That's actually where you start realizing that achieving more in less time is really possible. Still, probably you think, yeah, these 2 techniques are not so difficult to use, everybody understands them. But there are 2 little secrets. And those secrets make the difference between succeeding of achieving more when you use these techniques and actually using these techniques but nothing happens in your life. And I will show them through 2 simple examples. First example, well, let's say, what would you rather choose? Go for a 20-hour work week and earn 50K? Or go for a 70-hour work week and earn 60K? Probably most of you will choose to actually work 20 hours for 50K because you will say, yeah, the extra money is not worth the effort. That's exactly what the Parkinson's law is actually saying. You should spend a lot more time only for a little bit more money. Okay, but if we know that, there's also another way we could start thinking of it. We could start thinking of, okay, do you know actually how much time we waste on average each week? Harvard did the research, and they found out it is 30%. That's immense. And if you start thinking about that, you could also start saying which 20% actions or things I do cause 80% of the time that I waste. Maybe the answer will be social media, be watching television, maybe driving. And it's those things that if you start realizing that, okay, I can apply this law in different situations, that you know you will apply them well. Because the whole secret of this law is that we most often forget to use the law, don't know we can actually apply the law, or the law is completely hidden and we didn't know that it could be helpful to take the decision. So my advice to you is actually you should take this question, this Pareto law, and put it on top of your mind. Because there are so much situations in which you can apply them, but we most often forget it. And that's actually the secret of this law. So from now on, try to put it at the highest possible rank in your own mind and start thinking of, okay, if I am in a situation where I feel overwhelmed or completely stuck, maybe the solution will be this law. So that's actually for the first technique, but also for the second technique. There's a little secret. So let's imagine you have to give a presentation in front of a group. You know now from the TED Talk that, okay, Mattias explained me that actually I should ask myself the question, what should I do if I only had 4 hours left? Okay, so you start realizing, I will start working on the first slides, and you start doing animation, and after 3 hours and a half, you know what happens? Oh, I see that I don't have enough time. But fortunately, it's a fictive deadline, so actually you have 2 more hours left to complete the task, and after 6 hours you complete it. No, that's not great. You know why? Because you have just undermined the whole point of this law. It's actually the strength or the power of the deadline that provides the value of this technique. It's by making sure you really believe that this deadline is fixed that you will really start to focus on what is really important. And to show you quickly how that would work is, what would happen if after these 4 hours there would really be somebody that comes in the room and would listen to your presentation? Well, probably if you would start by making this presentation, after 1 hour you will start to think, okay, am I still on track? I have still 3 hours, but then the person comes. After 2 hours you will also ask yourself this question, and after 3 hours also. And after 3 hours you will start to think, okay, I have only 1 hour left, so now I should also trying to think of completing it into one piece so that I can bring a good presentation. And you will finish at the same time after 4 hours. You see, it's really the strength of the deadline is the fact that you really believe that there is a fixed deadline at the end that will make sure that you will also complete the task in 4 hours. I know sometimes it can be stressful, but it will also enable you to achieve more in less time. So, to end, I would like to ask you one more question. Next time when you feel overwhelmed or completely stuck at work, what will you do? Work harder? Or get completely stuck again? I hope that by now you will start thinking and knowing the answer. That the answer is achieving more in less time. So, let me give you still one advice. And it's a take-home message I want to give to you. Is that next time when you feel this feeling of getting overwhelmed, ask yourself 2 simple questions. What 20% actions lead to 80% of the result? And what if I only have 4 hours left? You will see in the beginning it will be quite difficult to find the answers, but after a while it will become a habit. And it's at that point in time that you will realize that achieving more in less time is not a paradox. Thank you.